What are Auburn's chances in landing one of, if not the best player in all of high school football?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It's Recruiting Thursday. We are joined by Brian Smith, Locked On Recruiting Insider and Auburn recruiting writer at auburndaily.com. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedon. College terms and conditions apply. Brian, there's a lot of chatter about several guys on the defensive front. We're going to talk about a bunch of them today. And also, I'm going to ask you, who's the most underrated member of Auburn's 2025 class? I think your answer is interesting, and I think you guys will find that interesting as well. Justice Terry, you spoke with him recently, and every time you watch this kid and every time you personally speak to this kid, he continues to impress and blow you away, and you think he could be the best player overall in this class.
Yeah, he plays at tiny Manchester High School in West Georgia. It's an hour and 20 minutes from Auburn. It's a great story because he could have transferred to any school in the country and they'd have gladly taken him.
Sure.
When I met Justice 2 years ago, he was 6'4", 285 with no body fat. I mean, blessed is an understatement, but he had offers from everybody. He was committed to Georgia already. Alabama was trying to flip him, et cetera, et cetera. He's flipped to SC, but I don't buy it. He's got Auburn, Ohio State, Florida State, Miami. Everybody's coming after him. He's going to visit all these schools. He's going to take it into the fall. I talked to him Friday night. And I just think that everything about him just gives the presence of what you're looking for in today's world. Plays the rarest position. He plays inside, and he can play in too. He's really freaky. And he's a guy that runs like a deer. He outran guys that weighed less by like 100 pounds than him the other night. Literally. I mean, it's just not natural for that. And then off the field, just yes, sir, no, sir. He's the hardest working guy on the team. I talked to his coach for a long time. There's nothing about him that doesn't say this is like if you're talking about the NFL draft, who's the safest guy in the top 5, blah, blah, it'd be Justice. That's how I look at it. Quarterbacks get more attention, and I understand it. He's the safest guy out of like the top 10 prospects in the country. Justice.
Yeah. Yeah. So Justice Terry technically committed to USC right now. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of people are really buying that, even USC people to some extent. So as far as folks who are in it, who are they and where does Auburn stack amongst the group?
He's going to visit UGA at the end of the month. That's his first OV, May 31st. He's got Southern Cal. He's got Alabama. He's trying to figure out what the date is for Auburn. It'll probably be this summer, but he could take it in the fall. And he's going to visit Ohio State and or Miami. He's changed his list 2 or 3 times. So it's hard to figure it out. But I think the 3 main SEC schools and SC are the ones that I would consider the most. That's Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, and Southern Cal. Ohio State, Miami, and Florida State, he's just curious. I don't think he knows a ton about them, but he might take visits to all of them as well. But my money's still on the SEC schools, just from talking to him off the record.
What does he say about Auburn when you talk to him about the Tigers and the program and, you know, the coach that he'd be playing for? What does he say about Auburn?
Well, he's been there several times. It's kind of like, it's literally the closest school to him, by the way. Manchester, for those of you who don't know, it's just north of Columbus, Georgia.
Okay.
Again, it's an hour and 20 minutes from campus. So it's an easy drive. He's been to Auburn several times, and Auburn is all over him. He guaranteed me that he definitely would take a visit there this summer. There's nothing about it he doesn't know. I think he's just trying to figure out everything. And we talked about, coaching decisions, et cetera, who leaves, who doesn't. He's looking at the big picture, which is smart. He wants to play for the coach that recruits him, preferably, et cetera. So Auburn's in the mix, and he's just kind of waiting out this season to see how it goes.
Does he talk about Vontrell King-Williams at all, or does he talk more about like Hugh Freeze when he talks about Auburn's coaching staff?
He talks in generalities because he likes everybody. Like he'll mention Vontrell or whatever, but like he just likes Auburn. Auburn, I know when he was committed to Georgia, Georgia's biggest concern was Auburn, not Alabama, not Southern Cal. Southern Cal has come in with a ton of NIL money and gotten all kinds of kids in the South to commit, which I don't think that's going to last. But
well, they commit, but they don't seem committed.
signing and committing are not one and the same, as you well know, Mr. Blackerby. But at the same time, I'd rather have him committed if I was SC than not. I guess that's one way to approach it.
Oh, and I think if you're another program that's fighting for, Justice Terry or, Juju Lewis is another one that we talk about a bunch. It's like, well, it almost looks better if you flip them from USC to your program. So, I mean,
that is a really interesting point because that is a tradition-rich program, probably one of the top 5 schools all time. So, yeah, there's that too. But again, he's a deep Southern roots kid right down the road from Auburn, and they've made a priority of him. Very familiar with the program. It would not surprise me if he signed with the Tigers.
Yeah, so that's Justice Terry, defensive lineman from Manchester, Georgia, consensus 5-star, no matter where you look. You also got to see Malik Autry, who's right in our backyard here in Auburn, goes to Opelika High School. He stands out. You don't really have to ask who Malik Autry is. He's a head taller than everybody else.
That's true.
On that defense, which there's a lot of talent on that defense too. By the way, but what stood out with you watching Malik Autry lately?
Well, when I went to practice the other day, it was just another chance to, number one, look at his frame. Like, he changed his body a lot from last year to now. He's 320, and he doesn't look like a big fat slob. A lot of these kids that get recruited at this age, you take the frame, you redshirt him, and 2 years later you start playing him. Malik will probably play some no matter where he goes in college right away because he's put the time in, and he is really strong. Even in practice, they double him. Like, nobody's going to block him one-on-one. And
you have to.
High school kids, that would not be fun. But nobody can block him one-on-one, and he's a run stuffer. So it's what I expected, and they don't really let him hit anybody because they want their team to be still alive. But he can still move laterally too. That's the thing that's really rare about him, and why 24/7 has him like number 34 in the country or something like that. It's pretty high. Guys his size just don't move like that. And it's, Auburn, we talked about this all off season. They got portal guys. This is how you avoid having to go to the portal. Getting the high school kids that are elite. There's only a handful with that size and athleticism. Auburn is fortunate. One of them lives 15 minutes from campus.
No kidding. We've talked about winning your backyard, and that's certainly part of it. Malik's been interesting in his recruitment, though, because it seems like some weeks or months he's all in on Auburn and tweeting out his own bat signal when he hears other members of the class, coming in, which is usually a good sign. But then he talks about, how much he enjoys other visits. Alabama seemed to be an early one that was a concern. Now it seems to be like Florida is the biggest concern to Auburn landing Malik Autry when it's all said and done. Florida appears to be the one that he's most interested in outside of the Tigers. What's your sense with Florida when it comes to Malik Autry?
That's just a unique school. I mean, I've lived in Florida. That campus is incredible. They got a lot of tradition. That's an easy pick for a kid to fall in love if he's been there. It's a cool stadium, the whole nine. I think it's more intrigue than reality, though. I just don't think he'll end up at a school that has coaches on the hot seat.
Well, right. And I don't know if they're going to let him go or not when they go 5-7, 4-8 this year. I mean, Florida's got a ridiculous schedule.
It's the hardest in college football, no question.
Yeah, and I don't think it's close. And I don't know, can you fire Napier after that? I genuinely don't know the answer to that. So
it's a good debate.
You're seeing, we've talked to, Locked On Gators host Brandon Olson. He's like, I don't think they will fire him. Is last time I've talked.
That could be.
And so does that help or does it not? Because he'll certainly be on the hot seat if he, if he's not there. So I'm curious to see how that impacts the recruitment of Malik Autry, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So other defensive linemen and defensive players that are standing out, and Auburn is in the thick of it. We discuss those guys next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL. And obviously, Major League Baseball is heating up as well. FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home the big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Several futures are up involving your Auburn Tigers, and Vegas seems to be pretty low on the Auburn Tigers. So take advantage of that if you believe in what Hugh Freeze and the staff is doing so far. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Brian, when you look at other key guys that could be a part of the equation as Auburn seems to continue to make defensive line a priority, which is how you win championships. You and I have talked about that a ton. They did it once. They need to do it again. They need to do it again and again. But when you look at other members of the 2025 recruiting cycle, Walter Mathis is a guy that I've seen multiple places. They bring up Walter Mathis. He's from Savannah, Georgia. Calvary Baptist is his school. He's a 3-star across the board with the exception of Rivals. Rivals has him as a 4-star. He's a 3-star everywhere else. But you and I were kind of talking about him before we clicked record. The offer list is more valuable than how many stars a player has, especially when you look at where he is. So your thoughts on Walter Mathis, the standout from Savannah?
First off, your point about the offers being more important is there. He's in Savannah. It's on the coast of Georgia. Nobody scouts it. I have friends there. I've scouted there a few times. It's always underrated because nobody wants to go there. It's just a pain in the butt to get to. So that being aside, when you have offers from Oregon and schools all over the West Coast, Texas, et cetera, and you're in Savannah, Georgia, that tells me you are not a 3-star prospect. Number two, he's 6'3", 285. He's already got natural size to play on the interior, the D-line. And then it's just the rarest position to recruit in terms of the number of players at that size. It's the number one predictor for who wins titles. If you go back to the beginning of Bama's run, there are only 5 schools that really have been dominant consistently. And Ohio State, LSU, Bama, Georgia, Clemson. It's not any shock here. They all get the D tackles. Mm-hmm. That's why these kids get so many offers, and this is one of them. So his offer list is insane. Auburn's in the mix, and I can't say it enough. You could never have enough D tackles, man. And I know you know that. We talk about offense. It's the same thing with defense tackles. Got to have a lot of them.
Yeah, you need them. And that's why I asked a question about Justice Terry earlier in the show. It's like, okay, Vontrell, this is your time. I mean,
they got to load up because their underclassmen group's good with the freshmen. But if you get 2 classes like that in a row, you just completely change your program.
Yeah, it totally changes your footing for the next 2 or 3 seasons. And it also probably makes the sales pitch easier. It's like, well, all these other top guys are coming. Like, you do it too. It'll be your turn.
Yeah, good players want to play with other good players.
Yep. Okay, Zion Grady, the edge defender from Enterprise. We've talked about him a ton. You still think Auburn is in this? It seems like Alabama is trending a little bit for him, but where are you with Zion Grady?
It depends on the minute of the day, which is not surprising with a 17-year-old. Zion's a real laid-back kid. He's not somebody that's going to try to put his info out there that much, but Miami, Auburn, Georgia, Alabama, et cetera, are in on him. It's one of the weirdest recruitments in this cycle, regardless of state. He was committed to Bama early, but that was the Saban staff. The new staff came in and dropped the ball. Just straight up dropped the ball on him. Didn't go over well in the greater Zion family, and he decommitted. So I don't know how you make up for that, but Roach, the defensive line coach, is probably involved, a guy from Bama. I don't know how they're recruiting, like which guys, but Roach is a famous recruiter and coach at Bama. It's a lot to overcome, though, when you drop the ball. I was told they didn't call him. I don't know for how long, but like after you come in, you call all your commitments. They didn't. So that is weird to me. I need to see him actually take the Bama visit to take them seriously.
Do you think it's a larger issue than just Grady, or do you think that was just isolated to him?
I've been told that was with multiple guys, including one kid who was standing in front of me. I'll leave it at that. A different player. So I don't know how that happens. They've got 5 billion people in the back office at the University of Alabama. It's just mind-blowing. I did a whole podcast about, like, what are you doing? So I don't know. The Alabama job's so easy. It's ridiculous. So just don't screw it up, which is what they were doing.
Sure.
But if he takes the visit, then Alabama's back in it. It's not what they say. It's what they do. That is, once again, the deal. Miami's the dark horse there. He's been there before. That's a school to watch. So they're recruiting him hard. And Jason Taylor, Hall of Fame coach, is the one recruiting him. That's a pretty big sell.
I forgot he was down there. That's cool.
He's I mean, Jason Taylor comes to your high school and stuff. You're going to know.
Yes, you listen, especially if you're want to be a pass rusher. No question about it.
Yes, indeed.
No question about it. All right. As far as Auburn's just, footing and standing with the defensive line right now, we saw them lose some defensive line commits. But they're in it for so many guys. I mean, what's a realistic picture in your mind of how this defensive line class could end up for Auburn? Can it be as good as the one they put together last year?
Well, if you look at it time-wise, you've got players committed. I mean, I get it, having Autry right next to you, 15 minutes away helps, but he's still committed.
Sure.
And you've got guys like that sitting in your backyard. You got to get them. Because we would be lamenting, hey, if he was committed to Bama right now, we'd be screaming.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
that was. And I mean,
or Florida, by the way. Like if he was committed to Florida, like
Bama, I would understand. At least in the same state. Yeah, Florida would hurt probably more in some ways. But like, even though they lost Coleman,
no, it wouldn't hurt more. It wouldn't hurt more. I promise you that.
Depends on your perspective, I guess. But anyway, sure. They're in on so many guys that like it's just the number. They're going to get somebody. And at this point last year, they weren't in this spot. They were kind of behind the 8 ball and hit the inside straight last year. So my question is really not whether they can match it, it's whether they can do better. It's not, I mean, I don't know if you're going to, Amaris is about as freaky athletically and raw as the players they're going to sign in 10 years. But at the same time, they're getting kids that they need with size. They got, Jordan Crawford's really good. Nobody talks about him because he doesn't do interviews and stuff. The kid from Parker High School in Birmingham.
Sure. Yeah.
But again, you're talking about, you got your 2D tackles already. Every school in the country would be happy with either one of them. So they can be picky now. Mm-hmm. They need more talent on the edge too. And they got Falk already. So they're like, okay, you're down to the point where it's either an elite player or to heck with it. And we'll take one kid in the portal.
Auburn, where are you on, his nickname's Big Tony, Antonio Coleman? Where are you with it? I mean, talk about weird, crazy recruitments. Like
and it's Zion. Still early. I mean, it's still early too. Yeah. You're 100% right though.
Yeah. I mean, commits to Bama, flips to Auburn, flips back to Bama. And I'm being told it's like Auburn's not done with him, Brian. Like Auburn still thinks they've got a really good shot of flipping him back. So, I mean, where are you with him? I mean, because if you get a guy like that, it's like, okay. I mean, that changes the perception of your class too.
Then you would have not 1, not 2, but 3 interior guys that can play for any school in the country in one class. That's as rare as it gets. Last year's best D-line class was Miami. They had 8 guys, but they had 3 D tackles. It's just hard to get them because there aren't many. Mm-hmm. The other part would be cool because that would also be 3 guys in state that Alabama absolutely would have taken. And I know your disdain for Alabama is something I can't relate to. I'm not from here, but
sure,
I'm sure that would just
be relate to it. I promise.
I and that's fine. I just try to be objective, but like looking at it, name a time when Bama lost 3 in-state D tackles they would take. Has it ever happened in your lifetime?
I doubt it.
It's what I mean. Like, and right now they got Coleman, so that's not part of it. But even losing 2 out of 3, Auburn doesn't win 2 out of 3 for coveted defensive line prospects against Bama. They don't.
Right.
And they also have Falk, etc. Now, these kids are all taking visits and stuff, but right now, you still got Zion, Jared Smith's a possibility, etc. I think Auburn has a chance to have one of the top 2 or 3 D-line classes in the entire country.
Yeah, that'd be a great spot to be in. No question about it, especially stacking it after what they did last year.
100%.
And we've talked about some guys already in the 2026 class that they're being aggressive on this early. So, I mean, you can see the path. You can see what they're trying to do. It just takes time. So they're doing it the right way. No question. All right. Who is the most underrated member of Auburn's 2025 class right now? Brian, be thinking. I'm asking you that question next. Brian, when you look at the 2025 class, they've got a little bit of everything. Like it's really coming together, and you expect there to be more offensive weapons that they build out with quarterback and receiver to be added to it in the future. But right now, as it sits in your mind of Auburn's 10 commitments in the 2025 class, who is the most underrated player that you think so far that's committed to the Tigers?
I'm going to say, and I like the kid, maybe I'm biased, but Ryan G., the tight end out of Milton High School.
Interesting. Okay.
He's part of the 7A state champion from Georgia last year that made an incredible run in the playoffs. He's an all-around player. He's 6'5", 6'6". He's 235. He can run really well, but he's also a really physical blocker. Most tight ends need at least 1, if not 2 years, kind of like D-line, to get ready to take the trench warfare. They'll split them out, but playing in the box in the SEC, not many freshmen and sophomores can do it. I think Ryan will at least be able to do it by his sophomore year. And he's got really good hands. That's a kid that's going to play early for the Tigers. Loves Auburn, comes visits frequently, and he's a guy that, quite honestly, I think can play for any school in the country. He just tight ends just don't get a ton of pub, but again, plays at Milton, 7A comp. When I watch his film, he's playing against dudes.
Yeah,
really, really good.
Yeah, and I love this too because not only do you say he can play early, he may have to. I mean, you look at Auburn's tight end situation right now, Luke Deal, Brandon Frazier, Rivaldo Fairweather, all gone after the season, based on my understanding of their eligibility. And then the only other tight ends that are currently on the roster, Micah Riley and Rico Walker. And I think both of those guys can, help out in the receiving game. And I think Micah Riley is actually probably a little underrated as a blocker, but you need more than 2 tight ends, obviously. And I think that could be a position group that they will go to in the portal. Maybe they'll get a senior, a guy, a 1 year left tight end type player, but you need a dude like Ryan G that can come in here and play early. So I love that pick.
I hope that it plays out the way I said because of your point. I didn't realize it until we were talking about it off air. I'm like, oh gosh, that's 3 guys. That's rough. They have to take at least 1 portal guy regardless because you need veterans. But if you get a kid like this, it's physical enough, you don't have to spend 2 spots on it. Mm-hmm. That's the key. And again, I imagine they'll end up with 2 tight ends in this class. We'll see. But with Ryan being in it, that's a great start. And you could do a lot worse with him. He's one of the top 10 tight ends in this class. And again, Atlanta prospect, proven, has offers from all over the place. Great pickup for Auburn.
Yeah, and with the decommitment of Hollis Davidson, I mean, they had 2 tight ends committed, so you got to think that they still want that.
I would agree.
But, yeah, we'll see what that looks like moving forward. So, I mean, what do you think's next for Auburn? I mean, do you think it's going to happen during the official visit season, or do you think this is kind of a lull everywhere? I mean, should Auburn fans be concerned that there hasn't been a ton of news as of late?
This is every school in the country. And it's for 2 reasons. Number one, the portal. Yeah. Especially at the end of April. All the schools focused on it, which they should. Now that it's in the May evaluation period, coaches on the road, yada, yada, yada. I'll be at a practice today. You're talking about a situation where there's going to be guys committing, but few. May 31st is when it starts. So that's the first big official visit weekend. Like I mentioned earlier, Justice Terry's going out to Georgia that weekend. There's Auburn will have visits, everybody. Right around the 15th of June, it will be recruiting bonanza. Mm-hmm. Commitments galore, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida State, everybody. Kids just got to take at least a couple of their OVs as a rule before it starts to happen. Between the 15th and 25th, like 80% of those kids will make a decision. It's just, unfortunately, it's just a fire squad of like trying to keep up with it. You got to keep hitting refresh on your computer. It's awful, but it's what happens every year.
Yeah, and of course I'll be out of town on those dates that you just said.
Well, there you go. So fantastic.
Of course that's when it'll happen. So yeah, we'll keep you updated, obviously. Be sure to follow Brian and check out all of his written work and all that. Where can people check out everything going on in your work?
We got Auburn Daily. We're talking a lot of stuff right now, actually, with everything that's going on with the rule changes. I think it's going to be kind of a unique year with the headsets and all. I wrote about that earlier. And the recruiting visit dates, they are changing every day. Yeah. We never know who's going to be popping up saying, I have a visit switched with Auburn or added to Auburn. AuburnDaily.com's got you covered.
Yeah, please like the video. Please subscribe. We will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.